Peter. Peter is the director of marketing at MicroWorld, okay, and that's a company in our county. And what you need to know about Peter is that he is married, he's happily married, he has 3 children, and what you also need to know about Peter is about 5 years ago, his neighbor, one of his best friends, was fired from his job with no notice whatsoever, and it had a dramatic impact, as you can imagine, on the financial situation of the family, and they needed to move to another state. Now Peter oversees Lisa. Lisa is in her late 20s. She is incredibly driven. She is not married. She doesn't have kids, and she is really smart, and she does a really good job for the company. She's very creative, very dedicated, and she easily puts in 60 hours of work every week. She works through her lunches, she works into the evening, and she works in the evenings. What you need to know about Lisa is that she oversees a woman by the name of Catherine. And Catherine is in her early 40s. She was recently hired to the company. She's been there for about 4 months. They recruited her from Microsoft. She's got this great knowledge set and skill set that was going to be valuable for the company. She is a single mother of a teenage boy. And she is also smart as a whip. And she puts in her time. She works 40 hours, and then she goes home and has balance and takes care of her son. Lisa wrote and said, I want to fire Catherine because she's not pulling her weight. She's not working the hours that I think she needs to be working, and we need to do something about it. So Peter's like, ugh, dang it. I know I need to do something about it, but I'm kind of conflicted because I've got these different, values that are conflicting with one another. I've got this, this pressure, this business pressure that we need to produce. I want to keep Lisa happy, but I also know that I want to create a family-friendly environment for our company if we can. In fact, a couple months ago, the executive team sent Peter a note saying we want to create a family-friendly environment. We're going to create a task force. We're going to do some things differently to allow it to be a healthier place for our brain. In order to really make a great decision, a great ethical decision, you really need to know who you are and what you stand for before you go into any of the other frames. So you need to take time and think about you need to think about your personal values of who am I and what do I stand for. The other thing he needs to think about are how deep are my moral roots of the conflicting values. The other thing is, what are my feelings telling me? He's feeling really anxious. He's not feeling really good about this situation. But notice I didn't say, what am I feeling? I said, what are my feelings telling me? And really taking time to ask yourself, why am I feeling anxious? Why am I feeling not very good about this situation? Because that will provide some insight. And if you have a lot of anxiety and a lot of emotion associated with a situation, pay attention to that, because it usually means that the stakes are pretty high. And then who do I want to be going forward, knowing that the decision I make now will not only impact me, but it could impact the entire organization going forward. So that's the first frame. The second frame is the organizational frame. He needs to think about what are the values of the organization. Who are we and what do we stand for? We're a micro-world company. We like to be profitable, we like to put out good products, but we also like to care for our employees. What are the norms and the values that guide how we work together? So really thinking about if there is conflict in the organization, how do the people handle that? Yes. And then how do we define ourselves as a human institution? So do we have an ethic of care within the institution? Do we say good morning to one another when we come in and work? Or do we just go and do our work and then go home and not really care about the individuals that are there? Do we celebrate accomplishments? Do we celebrate birthdays sometimes even? How do we define ourselves as a human institution? And then looking at, are there some sources for moral guidance? So this could be some policies, it could be some procedures, it could be a mission statement, it could be a code of ethic. And those will all, those are good because they give you a starting place. They will show you some of the grand principles of what your organization stands for. Peter decided that he was going to arrange a meeting for Catherine and Lisa. He thought this was a great idea. He thought that they should meet and they should interact with one another, hear one another's perspectives, gain some insight to one another, and just work it out. And he didn't want to get in the middle of it. In fact, he had to, skedaddle. He had a presentation that he needed to do in Vegas. So he sent the email and just said, you two should get together and hear one another's perspectives. And I'll come back in about a day and see how it went, okay? So he flew out. You're like, it's not going to work, okay? And so he flew back. He went to the presentation, and he's feeling really good about himself because he's like, you know what, I'm getting these two women together. They're going to have ownership in the solution. They're going to hear one another's perspectives. It's going to work. It's going to be great. It's going to be fine. But, I'm not going to be a dictator. They're going to, I'm showing that I care about you. I'm showing that, I'm potentially a family man also. But it didn't work out. He arrived back to work the following day, and he had found out that, let me just get people right. He found out that Catherine had actually been fired by Lisa. Lisa went to his supervisor, the vice president, said she's not pulling her weight, and they went in and they fired her. Let's just give Peter a break, okay? I would say his intentions, I keep like saying, I don't know, I would say his intentions were good. I mean, he went through the personal, he knew who he was and who he stands for. He knew what the organization stood for. And he was really trying to show that I care enough to have you guys, to have you ladies have a conversation with one another and work it out. But he failed to recognize one thing. He failed to see it from her perspective. He was only looking at it through his own perspective. Both of them were looking at the same exact facts, except they interpreted those facts very, very differently. So what he needed to do, he needed to look at the final framework, which is the political framework. And the idea behind this is that you're just looking at it from the other person's perspective and trying to present the information to the person from their perspective in a way that's going to be heard, because it's not going to necessarily be heard from your perspective. And your perspective is good, but it's not. Lisa's not going to necessarily hear the same perspective that's coming from Peter. So a couple of questions that you need to ask are, what are the current realities? So the current realities are, is it not a family-friendly environment? The current realities are, they want it to be. They have a task force, but the current realities are not there. The current realities is we have Lisa, who's working easily 60 or more hours a week, and we're not saying don't do that. Virtue, Aristotle's virtue means you know what your values are, you live your values, you have high moral standards, you have great integrity because you know your values, you live your values, your behaviors and your actions mirror those values. And Machiavelli basically said you need to have vigor, confidence, imagination, shrewdness, boldness, practical skill, personal force, determination, and self-discipline. And the idea here is to do these if you have a just end, okay? You do this not so you can get a raise, not so you can get a promotion, but the idea here is that you are trying to see things from the other person's perspective, and you're trying to, you know your end goal, you know where you want to go, but you have to see it from their perspective, and you need to give them information from their perspective so they can see the end goal. So to conclude, and I'm sorry, I'm going to cut it short, sometimes demand creativity, persistence, courage, restraint, shrewdness, and fairness, and they often demand the capacity to work and live with the inescapable tension between virtue and virtue. So with that, I say thank you very much for your time.
What's the name of the book?
Oh, I'm Norma, you're